Hi, my name's Leslie Peck, and I am a graduate student at Virginia Tech, and today I'm going to present some research I've done looking at how configure affects the vase life of cut sunflowers and cut dahlias. So before I started, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Fine Americas for providing the chemicals we used, and to the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers because they provided some of the funding. When we're talking about cut flowers, we're interested in BA because of its anti-senescence properties. So BA can help delay the senescence of cut flowers, which will increase your vase life and increase the value of those flowers. And research has shown this has been effective for several flower species. It can delay leaf yellowing and the loss of petals on some species. Different research has used different BA application methods. So in a pulse solution or in the vase water, they'll take the flower stem and place it directly into the solution of BA. In the case of a pulse solution, the duration is typically a few hours after harvest. And for the vase water, those stems will stay in the BA solution for the entire vase life. Other research has shown that applying that BA directly to the flower or the foliage which you're trying to affect can be more effective than placing the stem in solution because there's not as much transport of the BA that has to occur. So in my research, we're looking at how configure, which is benzyladenine or BA, can extend the vase life of cut sunflowers and cut dahlias. And we picked these species because they're known to have short vase life. Sunflowers often have a problem where they lose their petals rapidly after harvest, and dahlias are reportedly pretty notorious for having short vase life. A lot of growers are happy when they can get 4 to 6 days out of a cut dahlia. So the first experiment we did was on sunflowers, and we had 2 cultivars. We had Moulin Rouge, which is that red flower, and those are particularly bad for losing petals and having shorter vase life than other sunflower varieties. And we also had Procut lemon, which was supposed to be kind of a longer-lived flower with less problems of petal drop. We tested 2 methods of applying the configure. The first method we used was a spray. We applied the spray to the whole plant before we harvested flowers, and the idea was that a grower could apply the spray, allow the REI to expire, and then come back the next day or a couple days later and harvest those flowers. The reason you see a range of days before harvest there is just that we had to wait until the flowers were ready to be harvested. The second application method we used was dipping the flower head. So after we harvested the flowers, we submerged the whole flower head in a solution of BA for 5 seconds, and then we, after doing that, would place the flower into its vase. The rates we picked were based on previous literature, and we used 300 parts per million of configure, and then the control flowers were either sprayed or dipped with water. And for these experiments, our vase life was defined as the time until half of the flower had an unattractive appearance. And you'll see more, I can explain more when I show you the pictures in a minute here. What we found was that vase life of the sunflower cultivars tested was not significantly affected by applying configure with either method. In the Procut lemon flowers, we saw a vase life of about 12 days, which was longer than the Moulin Rouge. The Moulin Rouge lasted typically about 9 days for us. So here are some of the pictures, and for both sets of pictures, if you're looking at the top row pictures, that's going to be at the peak of vase life when the flower is completely open and looking pretty nice. And the bottom row of pictures is that flower close to the end of its vase life. So in the sunflower experiment for both cultivars, we saw a lot of petal wilting. That was the most common reason we ended vase life. We also saw some browning on the green parts of the flower, those bracts behind the petals. We saw some neck bending, so you can see some of those flowers start to face downwards. And we did see a little bit of petal drop. But looking at the pictures, you can see that there isn't a significant visual difference between the different applications of configure we had used. So these are the pictures for Moulin Rouge. At the top, you'll see it looking pretty good in the vase. And then at the bottom, close to the end of vase life, we had slightly more of these flowers show petal drop, but it was only about a quarter of the flowers that we observed. that had this petal drop issue. For the most part, we saw petal wilting with these. But again, you can see there's not a huge visual difference among the different treatment groups. And moving on to the second experiment, we used 2 cultivars of dahlias. We had Park Princess, which is at the top there, and Karma Yin Yang, which is that bottom picture. We grew these out in ground beds here in Blacksburg, Virginia. And so for this experiment, we did not use the spray application because that would be logistically complicated for us out in the field. We did apply Configure as a dip. So those methods were the same as for the sunflower study, where the flower was submerged for 5 seconds after being harvested and then placed into its base. We used the same rates as Configure, and then in this experiment we included a dry control. So the dry control just kind of gave us an idea of if dipping that flower had any effect on its vase life, even if it was just a dip into water. Again, vase life was when half of the flower appeared to be undesirable, and I'll show you that in the pictures in just a minute. We saw a short vase life, just like Dahlia growers report, that ranged between 4 and 8 days and was about a week for both cultivars. But we didn't see any significant effects of the PGR application on these cultivars. So some pictures. For Park Princess, you have at the top 5 days after harvest and at the bottom 7 days after harvest. For all the dahlias, the reason the vase life was ended was flower petal wilt. And so you can see kind of in the bottom pictures, it would be the outermost petals start to wilt first, and some of them turn a little brown. But again, for this experiment, not seeing a whole lot of effects of the Configure. And here are the pictures for Karma Yin Yang. You can see, especially on that dip control, just the angle of that flower lets you see those bottom petals as they're beginning to wilt and turn brown. But we weren't seeing a huge difference among the treatment groups. So in summary, our Configure spray and dip applications to the Moulin Rouge and Procut lemon sunflowers did not extend their vase life. We also didn't see an extension of vase life when we dipped the Dahlia, Park Princess, and Karma Yin Yang in Configure. So I wouldn't recommend Configure for application to these taxa for use as cut flowers. And if you want to do some more reading about this, you can take a look at my references. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has helped with the research. And I think I might have just a second to take one question or two.